Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Tony Rich, and I'd like to personally thank Linda Reinstein and ADAO for the opportunity to present here today and for their absolute commitment toward a total asbestos ban in the US, something that's been long, long overdue. So many talented professionals and countless supporters have committed their invaluable efforts and sometimes much of their lives to help solve the ongoing crisis of deadly asbestos in our buildings, in our infrastructure, and in our products. For nearly the last century and a half, toxic asbestos has been put into thousands of products, winding up in our workplaces, our institutions, our places of worship, our schools, our homes, in planes, trains, automobiles, and seagoing vessels, and even in spacecraft. We've essentially surrounded ourselves with asbestos. But what do we do? What can we do? Well, to no one's surprise, when the EPA and OSHA came into being, asbestos was such a priority that it was placed at the very top of the list of dangerous substances to study and control, eventually leading to volumes of laws and regulations in an attempt to manage risks for protecting our health and safety. Standards and protocols were established for requiring appropriate training and certifications of individuals as asbestos inspectors to first find where asbestos may exist so that we can address it. An individual maybe such as myself, who at one time didn't know a thing about asbestos. But it was through a proper initial training program where I learned various aspects about asbestos, such as its history of use, health effects, identifying suspect materials, sampling procedures, and so on, through that training. As an asbestos control professional, for the last 30 years, I've had a very unique vantage point in looking at asbestos in our everyday lives. Observations from one whose job is essentially to hunt down this seemingly ubiquitous hazardous material, asbestos. Documenting and sharing these findings pretty much for the sake of awareness. I believe one of the most eye-opening observations I've had about asbestos is the extent of its usage, its prevalence in so many places and in so many materials. I think Tom spoke on that. It's just almost mind-boggling. Over the years, I've found an endless amount of literature referencing asbestos as the magic mineral, an abundant natural mineral product that provided industries products with many benefits, such as high insulating value. It was fireproof, chemically resistant, durability and strength, and many other properties, and was relatively inexpensive, all in one ingredient. It's no wonder industry pushed their products for generations. Asbestos was once illustrated and perhaps even revered as a goddess, protecting human constructs from damaging forces of nature, and was popularized in mass public media. I also learned that the early asbestos industry was in full swing in the US by 1881. As featured in the February 1881 edition of Scientific American. The periodical highlighted a company called H.W. Johns, who went on to become the world's largest asbestos manufacturer, Johns Manville. It was reported that JM had reached annual sales on the scale of billions in today's dollars. JM had their own pavilion at a past World's Fair where attendees could browse the finest asbestos of the day. I find JM asbestos catalogs continually, which represent several hundred products alone just in Johns Manville catalogs. Clearly an asbestos giant. JM had a massive R&D program, research and development, always searching for new ways to use asbestos. Another asbestos giant was a manufacturer by the name of Keesby and Madison, which Marilyn spoke of, based in Ambler, Pennsylvania, and as she said, claimed by K&M, Keesby and Madison, to be the asbestos capital of the world. In 1904, K&M also claimed to have patented a particularly friable and popular type of insulation material called magnesia. K&M produced kits, asbestos kits, designed for K&M sales representatives to visit schools and pass around samples of asbestos to students and products in the classroom settings, which had the combined effect of direct product branding and desensitizing children to the use of asbestos materials, not to mention the actual exposures to the students. I routinely find JM and K&M asbestos products during building inspections still today. Yet another asbestos-containing product I find is contaminated vermiculite, most of which went by a product name called zonolite. The loose fill insulation material is inherently friable and dusty and was reported by Andrew Snyder and David McCumber in their book to be present in some form in nearly, he said, between 15 and 30 million properties. A clear and present danger. Attic after attic, wall after wall, loose fill vermiculite is routinely found, not only in loose fill form, but also in aggregate and plasters and even concrete. I've learned that zonolite product was sold in several grades, from a fine material resembling sand to a larger, coarse, gravel-sized material. One photo here shows a hole in a ceiling from the attic side on the far left, bottom left, made by a cable installer who reportedly used a child's sock to frantically plug the hole as the loose fill vermiculite continuously poured into the child's bedroom below. The mine where zonolite originated was initially claimed to be an asbestos mine. A sample of ore is shown here from Libby, which is predominantly asbestiform amphibole, which needs to be crushed to extract the very little actual vermiculite intergrown in the ore. W.R. Grace, who later acquired the zonolite mine, sold the asbestos-contaminated vermiculite as a gardening aid used to condition soil. At the bottom right, it shows what looks like small sandy anthills at the bottom of a wall, which was actually made by accidental punctures by a forklift equipment. Employees believed the material pouring out was sand, but inspection found that the material was actually fine-grained vermiculite. Dozens of such punctures were throughout the facility. Many of the asbestos products and artifacts, site conditions, images were used in ADAO's popular photographic campaign. Many of these photos, which have also been made into important visual resource for folks who have concerns about product materials in their homes and workplaces. But what you can't see in the photos are the harmful microscopic asbestos particles airborne in the contaminated areas. Images avoid these exposure risks. Asbestos inspections in buildings often include the usual suspects: floors, ceilings, walls, and what else may be above the ceiling, behind the walls, underneath the flooring. Even though asbestos cement is a hard, dense material, it can and does degrade, releasing asbestos fibers. Where does the asbestos go? Asbestos-containing plaster is more common than property owners may realize. I regularly find asbestos in wallboard joint compound, One of these photos shows where a contractor cut through to install electrical conduit. Awareness training for tradespeople would likely make a difference. And here's more of the usual suspects: pipe insulation, gaskets, packing, spray applied fireproofing, galbestos, duct insulation. One of these photos shows a large group of pipe flange with damaged gaskets. They wanted to salvage the metal, but it created a very large contaminated area in the building. The galbestos shown in the middle on the bottom shows the white, friable felt, asbestos felt, exposed to the environment. And would you believe asbestos snow decoration, asbestos dish towels, and blue asbestos in cigarette filters? I'm here to say, sadly and tragically, yes, it's true. All starting essentially with a rock. Examples of chrysotile and chrysotillite are shown on the bottom. Lastly, I leave you with an asbestos manufacturer's marketing document which touts 101 uses of asbestos paper. Homeowners writing in, stating that they use it to line the interior of their ovens, their stoves, on barbecue pits, shielding around ducts and on hot pipes in their house, all from one product. I'm sure there's many more, but what comes to mind is non-occupational asbestos exposure. It's chilling. So from the 1800s to today, most of the installed asbestos is still in place. And hopefully you would agree that seeing is believing, and asbestos awareness can save lives. Thank you.